For the library of the Duke's archives of all material pertinent to the Convergence, Hail and Orlando, in the first flame we trust. The following are a collection of letters found during the Third Purge of Yharnam. They were sent from one Bob the Hollow to a recipient known only as Stray. Both are reported to have resided in that city during the Second Red Moon incident, and whom the townsfolk believe to have been hunters once. The letters were found in Stray's long-vacant residence. All doors and windows were locked from within. There was nobody inside the building. This is transcript officer number 16, record 736F75-6C, session 1. Commencing log. Now. Primer. I've seen the dark universe yawning, where the black planets roll without aim, where they roll in their horror unheeded, without knowledge or luster or name. Greetings, Stray, my old friend. Long's it been since we left the hunt together. I pray to no god, you and I both know better, but I hope this missive finds you well. If these words have found their way into your hands, then my new friend has found her way to my old land. Former royalty as she may be, I can tell she's a gentle soul underneath it all. But that also means I've hunted my last hunt. Finally met my match, as they say. Alas, I fear my mind has been fractured. I should strive to pen these words with my trembling hands. From my mind's eye, I shall pass on to you, good friend, all the insight I've gained from these lands between, while I still can. And what better place to start than the greater will of grace that bid me stand before the Elden Ring? This should serve as a primer, covering broad subjects in broad terms. But don't go getting your inquisitive mind in a shudder just yet, Stray, as I know you would. I assure you we'll be getting into much more detail once you've got you up to date on these fundamental concepts regarding these strange new lands. Now imagine, if you will, a golden land, lush and vibrant, ever under the gentle gaze of a golden tree and the goddess therein. The Elden Ring is associated with grace, the Erdtree, and the greater will. In fact, all these terms are used almost interchangeably, but they are not all the same thing. Outer gods seem to come from the stars, although stars shouldn't be taken in a literal sense. A higher plane of existence might be a better way to understand the outer cosmos they inhabit. This proposed origin is first implied simply by the title outer, as in from outside this world. It is also hinted at by Sellen when she says, "It should not be forgotten that glintstone sorcery is the study of the stars and the life therein." The fire giant's one-eyed god's description is reminiscent of Estelle and the falling star beasts, both of whom have a single eye protruding out of their foreheads, and are explicitly associated with the cosmos, to stars and meteorites respectively. And finally, regarding grace, the Elden Beast itself also came from a fallen celestial body, since it is said that long ago the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between. If the stars command our fates, then amber-hued stars must command the fates of the gods, after all. So the outer gods live among the cosmos, but they are not the same as the stars and meteorites that fall on our world. Falling star beasts, alabaster and onyx lords are born out of meteorites, but aren't outer gods themselves, just as Estelle isn't considered an outer god either. And the Elden Beast is deemed a vassal to the Greater Will, implying the Greater Will to be its regent outer god. And lastly, the scorpion stinger is said to be crafted with the remains of the presumed sealed outer god of Rot. But just like grace and the Greater Will, Rot continues to exert influence even without this scorpion-like entity, which can be seen in Melania's birthright and posterior ascension, and arguably through Gowry, who operates as an unseen force possessing random pests. What this means is that the scorpion was but an envoy, an avatar, that existed apart from the outer god itself, just like the Elden Beast and the Greater Will. It would seem, then, that the outer gods are either wholly incorporeal, or at the very least exist in a form we can't currently understand, and that they reach out to our world from the outer cosmos by sending envoys that come in a form that, from our basest of perspectives, is akin to falling stars and meteorites. The human mind is a funny way of making the unfamiliar seem somehow familiar, doesn't it? Even when faced with the eldritch, we make up names and faces for that which simply can't be known. And speaking of which, the Elden Ring, on the other hand, seems to be a focal point for the Greater Will. Grace and the Golden Order are tied to it, and the two fingers tell us that Queen Marika is the vessel of the Elden Ring, carrier of its vision. The Elden Ring is a matrix that synthesizes the powers of the Greater Will, and a tool with which it exerts its influence. In this latter sense, the Elden Ring and its subsequent Great Runes could be seen functionally as a formless seal, wielded by the Greater Will. This functionality is partly demonstrated by the fact the Erdtree has dulled from its former radiance after the shattering of the Elden Ring. And yet another small hint to this end can be found in the descriptions used in Land of Reeds for this kind of seal, where the word formless comes from this kanji, which is also used in the name of the Phantom Great Runes, and is different from this kanji that is used to name the Formless Mother. Now, grace is experienced first as a form of energy, and it seems to be the substance the Elden Ring is made of. It is also the medium through which the Greater Will conveys its commands to the Tarnished in the form of the guidance of grace. And say what you will about its power of influence, but every single Tarnished to ever have stepped into the lands between has done so under its direction. So at first, grace seems to be the embodiment of the Greater Will, a manifestation of that specific outer god. But that's not exactly true. Grace, as it would seem, is not as pure as they would have us believe. First and foremost, Melania, Margot, and Moog, all born of the eternal goddess herself, were birthed as carriers of scarlet rot and accursed blood. Their very existence stands as evidence that the resplendent hues of the golden lineage are not all that exists to be inherited by those descended from the grace given. Another example is that most fire incantations are fire monk spells derived from the flame of ruin, but prophets sometimes glimpse it within the faith, all the same. Despite its unmitigated golden appearance, fire is an intrinsic component of grace as well, which is exemplified by the golden flames of the Blade of Calling and the Elden Beast. And Renala's great rune's only purpose is to perfect rebirth, a process fueled by larval tears that were in turn used to create the Eternal City's silver tears. So given the great rune of the Unborn was once a part of the Elden Ring, we can stipulate that the Elden Ring also has the power these larvae are associated with as one of its elements. The process through which these powers were added to the Greater Will can be glimpsed at the end of a Tarnished's journey, should they choose to mend the Elden Ring by adding a new rune or ring to it. With the exception of the mending rune of Perfect Order, all of them change the appearance of the outer layer of the Erdtree to something other than the grace-given continents we had known. A new power is added to the Matrix. A new power sits at the forefront, but grace is still part of it. In this sense, each new era can be seen figuratively as a new ring forming around a tree trunk. This is agreeable with the dichotomy between the Great and the Erdtree. The Erdtree stands as the monolith of grace, but their shared root system and the differently colored husk we see beneath the outer layer imply the tree itself wasn't always grossly incandescent with the gold of grace. And if grace was grafted onto this system, then the same must have happened with the other powers we just discussed, right? This many rings hypothesis is illustrated by the engraving on Malekith's altar, displaying a more complete version of the Elden Ring. And the cycles that expand its matrix are depicted by the relief above the archway leading from the Elden Throne to the inside of the Erdtree, which depicts a tree above another tree, and another set of roots growing upward from them. These cycles are even hinted at by the very design of the Elden Ring itself, where Marika's rune sits both on top and at the bottom of it, meaning the beginning and the end of a cycle. They're hinted at by the Golden Order's law of regression as well, which states that all things yearn eternally to converge, meaning all powers will be assimilated. This interpretation also gives the pattern of Radagon's rune a new meaning, where the lines underpinning the rings can be seen as converging upon each other, i.e., bringing many powers together. And finally, these cycles are referenced by the Elden Beast's sacred relic sword, saying, "Sword wrought from the remains of a god who should have lived a life eternal." Some think of it as the end of an age, while others the beginning. But the truth of it being, of course, that they're both right. Every end is a beginning is an end. Only our lack of perspective prevents us from seeing that every age is but another clockwork step in this never-ending cycle of power exchanging hands, never really changing at all. As per Grace, I can now say that it wasn't meant to be taken as a manifestation of a specific outer god, meaning of course the greater will to which it's most commonly associated. The greater will has absorbed Rot, but the entity known as the God of Rot still exerts limited influence through it. And likewise, the Formless Mother can still grant power unto accursed blood, and compel shambling corpses into a state of worship. All this indicates that any given power isn't exclusively associated with any given outer god, and there is no reason to assume Grace works any differently. Further still, when mending the Elden Ring, the changes we see with the Erdtree signify that any given outer god doesn't have to be exclusively associated with any given power either. In light of these facts, control over any given power isn't absolute innate value, and should be seen more as spheres of influence. Outer gods, wherever they may be, are vying for control over different power sources, and one by one, the outer god, currently known as the Greater Will, is wresting control away from the others. Coming upon these revelations, it dawned on me that the Greater Will and its Elden Ring haven't always borne Grace as their defining characteristic. In different eras, marking different cycles, the same Greater Will would have been seen as a completely different force. An eternal ruler, bearing many different faces, spreading its influence across a myriad of worlds, as implied by the many Erdtrees we see when fighting the Elden Beast. And it's important to note that such takeovers don't necessarily mean the outer god being replaced has been destroyed. The outer god of Rot's scorpion-like avatar was either imprisoned or killed, and the god lost dominion over the power of Rot. But the god itself apparently still exists somewhere and exerts influence in our world. The same goes for the fell god, who is believed to have been slain by Queen Marika, but still lurks within the fire giants and grants them power. This is also arguably exemplified by the Serpent God and the Formless Mother as well. Their limited presence in modern-day lands between possibly being explained, oddly enough, by the presence of death birds. They appear in places such as the Academy Gate Town and inside the walls delineating the outskirts of Morn Castle. But it wouldn't make sense for people to have built these places where they are if there were death birds coming to kill them every day at dusk, which implies the current iteration of death birds is a more recent development. It could be concluded that the weakening of the Greater Will's influence in the world, due to the shattering of the Elden Ring, has given these ancient forces the leeway to make themselves manifest once more. But we have seen the blasphemous and the divine intertwine, have we not? So fret not, stray, in the face of the godlike. Such as nightmares can be slain, so too the outer gods from beyond the fog can meet their demise. Although, not here. And probably not in a sense we could comprehend. In my studies, I've stumbled upon an account of one such instance taking place, left to us by the primeval sorcerers. For when Lusat glimpsed into the primeval current, he beheld the final moments of a great star cluster, and upon seeing it, he too was broken. And given everything that's been discussed thus far, what this sounds like is that he witnessed the death of an outer god, doesn't it? Then, when Azure glimpsed into the primeval current, he saw only the darkness of the abyss, since, given that outer god's absence, a glimpse of that same current would present you only with the nothingness of space. And lastly, the glimpse of the primeval current that the astrologer saw became real, and the star's amber rained down on this land, meaning the remains of that outer god had fallen to this world as a star shower, the source of the glintstone that contains the vitality of the stars. And I tell you, my good friend, with all the conviction only a madman can possess, these unknowable entities have secrets that shall remain beyond our ken. Don't get me wrong, though. That we do not know them won't stop them from meddling with our fate, and it should therefore not stop us from rising up and contending with their vicious designs. And the point of these revelations, I think, is that one cannot determine which outer god is truly in command of the Greater Will at any given point in time. Not beyond a doubt, at least. And that makes the Greater Will not really an entity, but rather an identity, a name and a mask, taken up by whatever god is currently in control. We never meet them. We don't really know who or what they are. All we can see are the effects of their conflict and whatever front-facing facade they choose to show us. We may be fooled into worshipping it thus, but The greater will is no God. It is but the system of control they all employ to rule over us, to make us into no more than resources, you and I, one and all. There is a final note from the recipient of the letter. The postscript reads, "The endless line of graves stretching up into the heavens, too. I had not thought death had undone so many."
Thank you all very much for watching. Special thanks to all of my patrons: John, Ethan Finlay, Sinclair Lore, Balan, Several Bats, Liu Vampire, Sam B, Young Isalif, Hubal, Taylor Reed, and Morgan. This was the first video on a 6-part series. It was meant to set the foundation for what we're going to be discussing going forward. The idea is to release one every 2 weeks or so, and you can check the roadmap on the community tab. Or, if you're in a hurry, all scripts are available on Patreon. These 6 videos won't cover the entirety of the lore, but I believe they constitute the core of the lore on Elden Ring. I'll probably be holding off on the rest of it until after the DLC has been released, but who knows? We'll see. Well, hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and see you around.